Hi, and thanks for joining us for our discussion about the book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. My name's Aubrey. I'm our Adult Services Librarian at the Kimberly Little Chute Library. And with me we have...
I'm Jill Vandening. I'm also work at the Kimberly Little Chute Public Library.
And for those of you who don't know, Jill is epic at lots of the marketing things you see. So anytime you see some great things on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, it was probably Jill. So the book we're here to talk about with you today is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. For those of you who don't know anything about this book, this is actually the prequel to the Hunger Games series that came out years ago. There were 3 books and a whole movie franchise made off it, but this is actually the prequel. So this book stands alone, but it's in the same world, and it kind of tells you more details that really click into place if you have read the other books, but if you haven't, there's still good things there too.
So, and you should know that our discussion is going to have spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, you might want to bookmark this and come back to it after you read the book, unless you want spoilers. So, Aubrey, what did you think of the title of this book before you read it?
Before I read it, I thought it was the longest title around, and I really wondered, what the heck? Why? Why do we have songbirds and snakes and So it really threw me off, in all honesty, but it helps that on the cover alone it says it's a Hunger Games novel, so my brain just auto-corrected it to, it's the Hunger Games prequel. It does not have a name. What did you think, Jill?
I agree. It was a very long title, and I had a hard time remembering it when it started, but it did come together while you're reading the book. All of those things, the ballad and the songbirds and the snakes, all came in. So, and I thought it was brilliant.
It makes sense later on, I promise you.
I have to give Suzanne Collins due credit for this book, because I really, when I heard it was coming out, I thought it was going to be another one of those grabs of the big series that was really popular. They just sent out another book just to get the fans to buy it and things. And I thought it was really good. It was really good. It wasn't just a Hunger Games good. It was good on its own.
Yeah, and I have to say too, I thought Hunger Games was such a unique premise. Obviously a little morbid, but so unique. And I remember in high school, that was like my friends and I would pass it along each other, and it was like the award to get to have the next Hunger Games book. And it was just so fun. And my first thought was, how are they going to dive back into it? Also, it's been enough. How will that world even still have anything to give you? And it still did. So like you said, all the credit to the author.
She did great. So this book is about Coriolanus Snow and his origins. Did he seem like the same character we've seen in the other Hunger Games books?
For me, I didn't feel like it was the same character. One thing to note is in the Hunger Games books, they always referred to him as President Snow. We didn't really have his first name that I recall. It wasn't a part of the story. So when we refer to him by his first name the whole time, I think that really helps you separate, like, this is him before he was the evil president of Hunger Games, which, again, if you haven't read the books, it doesn't actually matter if you know that he becomes the president and that he goes kind of evil. But if you have read it, you can make that connection. But I really didn't think it... I had a very hard time putting them as the same character until the end.
Did too. Well, he was so young in this book. He's just becoming of age, I think. And, you know, Corio, it's so kind of cute.
Yeah.
So his family was poor and couldn't even afford new shirts. Was that a surprise?
That was definitely a surprise because, again, pulling out from Hunger Games, etc., and the book also explains the capital is like the area to live in if you're rich, if you have name recognition, you have power. So they live in the capital. I didn't know people could live in the capital and not have funds, not have food, and I didn't realize that from the beginning either. Also, they mention in the book kind of pretty close at the beginning that the Snow family, they've always had a bunch of money. So hearing that he doesn't have that, their name hardly means anything now, it was a bit sad because you feel for him as he needs a new shirt just to look good for school so he can get a better life. And they mention his cousin and having to, and I apologize, Jill, was it or his sister? Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was a cousin.
Okay, thank you. They mentioned his cousin needing to work really hard and perhaps do some scandalous things to even get him a shirt. And that was alarming, but it roped me in because you had a character you wanted to root for.
Yeah, that helps because he's not a very, in other Hunger Games, he's not a character you'd want to root for, but in this one, that was interesting. And he seemed like embarrassed by the poverty, like he wanted to hide it. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe it is rare in the capital. I don't know. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So, did you remember Tigress from the other books? Because I did not remember her.
Tigress, the name sounded very familiar to me, but I don't recall why. And it made me think that I should either reread the books or at bare minimum watch the movies again. Was Tigress someone who helped with the Hunger Games? Were they in the Hunger Games? Do you know?
When I was looking up the questions, I was finding things that by Mockingjay that we know that Tigress is on the rebel side. So she's on the opposite side of President Snow by the books. Oh boy. So that kind of surprised me because I don't remember her. I don't remember her at all. So
no.
But she was a big part of this book because she seems to be like his biggest fan.
Right. So that'll be interesting if we ever reread the books to see who they were. I felt like there might have been a few other characters that maybe I would remember them, or maybe there was an Easter egg that like of some sort. Like there were just some. Yeah. I wasn't
like
sure if their names were just
maybe or something.
Mm-hmm. But that's okay. Yeah, no.
So let's talk about Lucy Gray Baird. What did you think of her character?
Oh my. She was a unique character. At first I liked her and I felt for her. Then I had my ups and downs because there were times where, and you know, this makes 100% sense. If you're forced into the Hunger Games and have to kill a lot of people, that's going to impact you. But there were times where I was really rooting for, you know, the coupleship to happen between she and Snow and etc. And then once I reached the end, I didn't know how I felt about her. I understood Snow a little more than I understood her. So by the end, I was like, maybe I don't like you. Maybe you're just doing what you can to survive, and I get that. But the morals are a lot. I wasn't sure. I felt very mixed, as you can tell. How did you feel, Jill?
I liked her affinity for snakes. Like when we first meet her, she puts the snake down the mayor's daughter's dress, you know. That was pretty cool. And that she could, I don't know. I liked that about her. And I like that she was from District 12 because that was interesting. And her singing. Like one of the things we learn about her is she is the writer of the lullaby that Katniss sings, Deep in the Meadow and the Hanging Tree.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty amazing that we could see the origins of that, you know. I'm like, oh, that's neat. I didn't understand her, do they call that the Covey, her band? Different. I didn't quite get it, but.
I also will say with her character, I also felt bad for her because she was forced into the Hunger Games. It wasn't a fair drawing. She had basically stolen, I'll say the mayor of the town. That's probably not the correct term they use, but in kind of stealing the daughter's boyfriend, or at least the daughter felt that way, to then get forced into the Hunger Games. I mean, that's cruel. And so I felt bad for her, and, you know, I feel bad for all the people forced into the Hunger Games, but that particular case just felt a bit wrong there. So I just to how they described her dress the whole time. You say, well, she's always wearing the dress. It was for moms.
So much of the book centers on the romance between Coriolanus and Lucy Gray. What are your thoughts on this relationship?
I'm going to let you answer that one first, Jill. How did you feel about
I thought it was terribly wrong because, like, he's in a position of power and she's not. You know, so that bugged me. But I could kind of understand it because I felt like the author did a really good job with Coriolanus to make him seem like a young man, you know, like a young boy who would get a crush, you know. Mm-hmm. So I felt like it was believable. I didn't know how I didn't like, though, that it was happening.
That's fair. I started to wonder, too, if she was sort of like the Beauty and the Beast effect, like she was falling for her captor almost, because, you know, she is stuck in this place. They're not normal circumstances. And then the first person who's kind of nice to her, there's a romance. And I wasn't sure if it was a real romance or if it was the circumstances created it. I did feel like this debate kind of tied into Hunger Games, not to say it was the same, but, you know, we had the same situation where Katniss had Peeta, right? And because they were in this horrible situation together. So I felt like it seemed really similar to me that it would happen to these two. I
was not on Team Peeta ever.
There we go. So maybe that's why you weren't on the team for this.
Maybe.
Right? I can't say I was pro them together, but I can't say I was against it. I felt like it made sense why Florio would fall for her because, you know, he hasn't had the same, like, he hasn't felt connected to people, particularly because he's trying to hide everything of who he is. So it was nice that he could be a little more open, etc. But I don't know. Too, I wasn't sure I always bought it, too, because I felt like, well, we have the fellow who's on the other side of the Hunger Games and walking freely, and then we have the person who's in the Hunger Games, and part of me was like, this feels romantic at times, but is this really romantic? Is she just playing?
Yeah. Well, and like you said at the end, she kind of, it's a little different at the end. It's
yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe this was not what I thought it was at all.
Right. So I did think that was good writing because when I was reading it, it was hard to not be like, yay, I want them together. But again, my mind, maybe I read too many thrillers because, you know, in thrillers, everyone's horrible. But my mind is like, maybe she can't be trusted. I don't know. Or maybe if you were in the Hunger Games, you would just play with emotions to get out.
Yeah. So Coriolanus gets a break when he gets to feature Lucy Gray at the zoo. Quite a bit happens at the zoo. I remember they spent a long time at the zoo, like with these tributes in the cages and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed is that they were starving the tributes. Like they weren't getting food. Like getting food was a big deal for them. Where like in the books, you know, like Katniss and Peeta, they're fattening them up before they go into the, remember they had like feasts and things? It was different.
That was different. And I was, you know, I feel like with some things you can make them very symbolic, you can make them very deep, or you can take them at face value. I was wondering if there was some symbolism that like they were wanting everything to be a show, so then they have them like behind bars like animals just to go look at, etc. Then things got intense at the zoo. I mean, there was a violent death, there was, you know, and is it fair that they were being starved? Not at all. In fact, I wondered if they had waited even longer, these people would have died and they wouldn't have even had a Hunger Games.
And they were like, I thought the same thing. I'm like, because they were not doing well. They were like starving. And I'm like, how are they going to even survive to get to the Hunger Games? And some of them did not.
Although, as we're thinking of this, isn't it kind of weird they call it the Hunger Games and then they were being starved? Like, were they supposed to be hungry? Was that part of it?
Maybe it was.
Hunger Games.
why do they call them the Hunger Games?
I never thought about this until now, but they were hungry to go to the Hunger Games. I don't know if it's some stupid, like, they wanted them to be that way. I don't know.
Maybe it makes it go much faster because then they have food as a motivator and they go out and...
That's true.
Maybe. Let's talk about Sejanus, one of Corio's peers. He's different from the others. Do you think that is because he's from District 2 and not the capital?
I think that was definitely a big thing. He came from the capital, and then he was supposed to mentor someone that he literally lived with. I mean, that's pretty traumatic.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought that was like, it was a classmate of his trip.
Yeah, like, no. I will say too, he had kind of a bizarre backstory. Like, oh, his father got to move to the capital, and then his character, he didn't seem to like where he was at, even though they did have money, they did have power. And, it was interesting that there were people in the capital, such as our main character, who has nothing and wants something, and then you have this fellow who has everything and doesn't want it. At least that's how it looks, That doesn't always mean he has everything, but he was...
In relationship too, like, I didn't think Coriolanus liked him. The Plinths, really, but he, like, needed them for their money.
Yeah, and, would their relationship have been the same throughout the book if Cornelius did have the same resources that he did? I don't know.
I don't know either. I definitely was one, like, Sejanus seemed to like Corio a lot, but it didn't go both ways.
I don't even know why he liked Corio so much. Like,
no, he didn't seem like he did anything for him.
But they definitely bound together.
So what are your thoughts on Casca Highbottom, the brains behind the Hunger Games?
She was horrible. Oh my gosh. Like,
I think that's a character that we know in the books as well that I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember knowing her, but I felt like, she created these games and she kept doing horrible additions. Like, there was the scene where the classmate had, like, with Oreo, they were supposed to do an assignment together, and he did all the work, she didn't help, and they're in the lab, and, like, the horrible scene where the classmate sticks her hand in the snakes or whatnot, gets bit, and basically turns into, like, a human reptile. I mean, that was pretty savage.
That was those snakes alone were like, what was she doing with these snakes? And,
yeah.
Oh.
And, I felt like, too, her character just had no empathy about it. She was just like, well, this is what happens. And I felt like, too, she was really shaping the future President Snow, because she was really pushing him to take away the humanity from things, especially the Hunger Games or people in general. So I don't know, if Suzanne Collins wants to write another book, I would be curious to hear this person's backstory. Like, why is she this heartless? I don't know.
Yeah, I do get the feeling that, like, Coriolanus looked up to her a lot.
Yeah.
We are introduced to Dr. Volumnia Gall, head game maker. Did she surprise you in any way? Was she the one, Gall? Dr. Gall, was that the one with the snakes?
Did I get them mixed up, maybe?
Oh. I don't know. I get them mixed up, too. Like,
let's see.
I didn't read the book on paper. I listened to it on Google.
Okay.
So it was you had to catch the...
Hold on here. I do have the book here, so I'm just taking a peek. I'm going to the end particularly because we know that Snake Lady is who welcomes him back. So let's see. So Dr. Gall is the one who has the lab and the snakes. Well, What do you think, Jill?
I think that Dr. Gall is probably another one of those characters that might be in the Hunger Games that I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, she seemed to be grooming Corio to become evil.
Mm-hmm. And the thing too is, you know, I felt like there were some people who had started the Hunger Games that were mentioned in this book, because, you know, it's all the people that are working at the school, really. There were some people that really regretted it and were traumatized and look at what I've created. And then there were some that were just evil and like, yes, this is perfect. This will really solve every problem we have. There was really a divide, I thought. And
yeah, the Hunger Games are very different in this book. Like nobody watched it. Like it didn't have like the audience. Like, you know, in the later ones, you know, it was like broadcast all the time, and they would have something when somebody died, you know, and like something that just they did, and like nobody cared about it. I don't even. It was different.
That's for sure.
Were you surprised when the girl from District 10, I think this happened in the zoo, were you surprised when the girl from District 10 suddenly killed Arachne Crane? Did you think Arachne brought it on by teasing with the sandwich?
I totally, not that I thought it needed death, but we're reading a violent book and I expected lots of death. That definitely seemed like a point that was worthy of a death. I mean, you know, you can't tease.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cruel and teasing with starving people in these cages, you know. I was totally for this girl in District 10.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't even think she had a name. I think she was just girl from District 10.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing too is, you know, with these Hunger Games, your mentor and your person, they're supposed to work together. They want to win. And to tease with the sandwich, I mean, what? That's not going to build anything, Dodo.
Okay. Did the explosions at the arena surprise you? What are your thoughts on the arena? I didn't realize the explosions happened at the arena. I thought they happened at the zoo at first because I wasn't paying as much attention maybe when I was listening.
Mm-hmm.
The arena seemed like it was in really bad shape. Like, yeah. And I didn't picture it as big as it is, you know, in the later Hunger Games. It seemed like they were always very close to like where they entered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess for me, I just kind of pictured a baseball stadium, and like that was what my mind had for it. When explosions happened, I mean, I wouldn't say I really felt much about it. I just kind of accepted explosions happened. Okay, now that's going to impact things. Okay, but it did seem really junky, the arena in general. It seemed like, how do the Hunger Games last long enough to make the Hunger Games series happen? That's where I was at in general during this book.
Well, I think this was like the 12th year or something in this book, wasn't it? Like something.
Mm-hmm. So it already lasted quite some time, but, you know, it was failing, and I would have been okay with it failing, but, you know.
Yeah, it definitely grew from there, probably for many reasons.
Right.
Well, you kind of talked about this before. What do you think happened to Clemencia after the snake bite?
Spoiler. Well, I felt like she basically turned into a snake, or like had like some weird like hybrid things happening to her body.
It was really weird how they were kind of like hiding her. Like,
yeah.
Did they lie or something about her not being in the hospital when she was?
Yeah.
And
well, she was stuck at the hospital. No one saw her. Her parents were lied to. She was very angry, and I don't blame her. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. She shouldn't have lied and said she helped with a group assignment. I guess she'll never do that again. But also, some savage things there. And she was traumatized, too, every time she saw a snake and whatnot. And I think, too, they mentioned, like, she was pussy, and, like, it was really gross how they described it.
Yeah, it was gross how they described, like, her, like, she was scaly. Yeah, she did kind of turn into a snake, I think.
Yeah, I just remember there were scales, so my mind was like, human snake coming! Ah.
Sejanus's tribute Marcus was a classmate. Do you think that was unfair to Sejanus?
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was totally unfair. They should have, like, yeah. Why did they put him in charge of that same district, you know?
That was just savage. And I don't know if it was some power play that they thought he would have done better being with someone he knew. Like, he might have been more invested if that's, like, they thought they were doing a nice thing. I don't know, but, like, I totally understood when his tribute didn't want to help him at all or do anything. I mean, you went to school with this fellow, and now he's saying, go die out there, but don't die.
Yeah. Yeah, poor Marcus. And they gave him a name. I mean, you know him. And it seemed like he was like a bigger guy. Like they thought he could do well. Because he was, I think District 2 in general are bigger people, aren't they?
Yeah.
By the time the Hunger Games begin, there are only 13 tributes left. What are your thoughts on that? There were a lot of deaths before it happened.
Well, again, my whole thought was, will they have enough to even do the Hunger Games? Will it be called off this year? And I almost hoped it would have been called off, to be quite honest. But the 13 was kind of a weird number. I mean, they have 12 districts, and then very few actually had their 2 people. That was weird and interesting, considering later on, Hunger Games, you have 2 people for each district.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's kind of their person that they go with, the boy and the girl of each district. Often pair up. Yeah, that's unfair to the people. But Lucy Gray had her person, which I can't even remember his name.
Let's see. I probably won't be able to find it. But yeah, she did have her person. And there were a lot of alliances happening behind the scenes, too.
Yeah, it seemed like things at the zoo were being discussed when we were off screen or something.
Right. And that zoo, that shouldn't have happened, because a lot of people wouldn't have died if they hadn't been in the zoo or, all of those things. But
as the games begin, Coriolanus and Lucy Gray kiss. How does that make you feel? I didn't like it because I feel like, again, that he's in a position of power and she's not. But now, after I read the book, I wonder if it was more her plotting.
I think it was her way to make it that he would do anything he could to keep her alive. And, later on you read the book and you know that there was some cheating that happened, right? So I felt like, too, that was her way. Whether she actually felt romantic about him, I don't know. But I felt like she was trying to, reward him for doing that. And the only thing she could offer. I think he really had feelings for her. I don't know if she had feelings.
I think he did. I think he really did. And I wonder if that affected him as he got.
I think it probably traumatized him.
Kind of burned by love sometimes. That's
right. It doesn't help either. If we're paying attention, I think it was his first love. So that's going to be his first time feeling anything for someone in that way. And it got nasty. It really did.
Yes.
And recover from that.
So let's talk about Marcus, the guy from District 2. Now, he escaped after the explosion, I think. I was kind of rooting for him to get away, but then they find him and they bring him back, and he's not. They put him in the beginning of the Hunger Games. They display him. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah.
Wound up going up and killing him,
to
put him out of his misery more than for the Hunger Games. I know that was one of the worst moments in that book. That's just cruel,
Yeah, that was the worst. And, to just leave him hanging to die, basically, and on display. I mean, it's bad enough to die after trying to get out, etc. But, 2, my thought was that's the worst power play the Capitol can play to show, hey, you can try, but then we're going to give you a worse death than you would have in general. That was bad.
Because I think a couple others escaped too, and they just killed them.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they treated him different, you know. It was like, oh, that was terrible.
Yeah, poor guy.
So what parts of the Hunger Games looked familiar, and what differences did you notice?
Well, I'm just thinking here. This book had the beginning of some things. So, you know, when they had the food dropping in, I thought that was interesting because it was the first time, and you know that's a big thing later on, right?
Yeah, I liked that part with the drones, and they're kind of experimenting with them, and they're not
Yeah.
always working the way they should.
Yeah, so
and the sponsorship, they started that too with the having people sponsor your tribute.
Yeah, so I did like that part. Beyond that, if I recall at the beginning, they had like the grab your weapons. That felt familiar to me. I don't recall how they did it in the newer one, but they always supply the weapons to kill people.
They have a weapon drop in the later books or the earlier books.
Okay.
They did have in the beginning because they had to go into expose themselves to grab the weapon. That seemed the same. But so much smaller because I feel like where they were hiding was almost like a dugout or something. And like in the Hunger Games, in the later books, they have streams and they have forests and they have like a lot of land. A lot smaller.
Sure. Well, and the thing too is this one just seemed like such a tamed down version. I mean, obviously horrible things are still happening, but if I recall too, there were times where things were really boring to people because our awkward narrator who was, you know, live broadcast, he would have times where he didn't know what to say or do because nothing was really happening. I thought it was smart how everyone was hiding, but they couldn't get the ratings, the entertainment that way. So I understood why later on, I mean, there's some cruel things that happen that are also creative in the newer in the later Hunger Games. And I felt like it showed why that happened.
Well, they did like release the snakes to liven things up.
That was bad too. And, you know, I thought it was interesting as well that this just seemed like such a basic area. And when later on in the Hunger Games, there's times where they can live off the area. They can do this. And they couldn't do that where they were.
So Sejanus goes into the games. I think he's trying to get Marcus's body out or something.
Yeah.
And Coriolanus has to go in. He's the one that has to go in and save him. He didn't seem like he wanted to.
No. I felt like the whole time Sejanus just really, really clings to Corio and he's forced to help him. And I thought this was a perfect example because it was basically, hey, Corio, you have to go do this. If you don't, you die. If you do that, if you go here, you can die. Either way. And
he's like, yeah, he doesn't want to do that. And he is the person that can get him out because Sejanus seems like, I mean, he's so sensitive. He's like, I liked his character.
I liked his character. I just felt like he was in the wrong areas and situations because there were so many times where he could have died because he was displaying his true feelings, which not saying that's wrong to do, but he was really lucky throughout the whole book, and they gave so much
going into the games like that. I mean, and they almost didn't make it out. He wound up killing his first Bobbin on the way out.
Yeah.
So, he could have died right there.
Well, and that's what's hard too, because you see how like all these outside circumstances kind of all added up to make Florio President Snow later on. Because he felt it so easy to kill someone, right? And I don't know if being in these vicious Hunger Games because he had to get his friend, like, how did that impact him, right?
Well, he seemed a little disturbed, I think, because he did mention a few times that he killed that Bobbin to get out of the Hunger Games. And, he seemed disturbed by it at first, but I think as the kills add up, I don't know, he seemed disturbed by all of them. Like, he was about them. He doesn't just dismiss it.
Mm-hmm. I think too, it almost shocked him how easy it was to react and kill people too.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think Coriolanus was cheating when he put the handkerchief in the snake's cage?
I think people took it as cheating. I don't know if it really felt like cheating particularly because, I mean, if you really look at what cheating is, probably. Did I think of it as that? No, my mind went to he used his resources. He knew what this was because of unfortunate things. But
I didn't feel like it was cheating as much. Yeah, I thought it was more like using resources and stuff. It wasn't even necessary. I think Lucy Gray had a way with snakes anyways, and she didn't need that.
mm-hmm.
I don't think that's what he got because he gets busted for cheating. I think it's more for the rat poison that he gave her.
Mm-hmm.
I think she used.
It doesn't help either, though, that the handkerchief had very specific initials on it. So that, you know, the rat poison could have maybe been like, I don't know who had that, da, da, da. But then you have a handkerchief with initials, and it was good blackmail material no matter what, unfortunately.
So what are your thoughts on the snakes in the arena?
Well, it made sense why they did it. I just thought the snakes were terrifying, to be quite.
I thought they were terrifying too, but I thought it was cool because of Lucy Gray, and she's got affinity for snakes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, beginning, she puts the snake down the mayor's daughter's dress, and then they add snakes to the arena, and she uses them as weapons.
Mm-hmm. Could you almost argue that they wanted her to win then? Because that's a tool that, regardless, maybe we don't know what would have happened without the handkerchief, but because of the handkerchief, we knew that she would make it. But we've had that debate just a little bit ago about maybe she would have made it anyways. Do you think they were trying to have her win?
Well, I don't know, because they did not bust Corio for the snake thing. They busted him for something else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe they did want her to win, but she did bring a theatrical thing to it. You know, they're always talking about how colorful she was. That announcer guy would like to talk her up. Maybe they did. Maybe they did for ratings.
And she was singing quite a bit, and people liked that too. And maybe. But regardless, I mean, if they're going to use any tool, at least it's something that tied in with one of our main characters versus just something random and unpleasant.
The Hunger Games sure didn't last long, though. Like, in the first book, when Katniss is going into the arena, you know, almost the whole book is the Hunger Games. And in this book, there's a lot that happens before the Hunger Games, and there's a lot that happens after the Hunger Games, but the actual Hunger Games parts is very small. That was kind of interesting. Like, it didn't last long. Well, it only started with half the people, but...
Maybe that's what it was. With half the people, they didn't have the technology. That's going to be really short.
Yeah, so they hurried it up with snakes.
It's true.
So in part 3, Coriolanus is sent to District 12 to be a peacekeeper. What are your thoughts on that? I was kind of surprised by this part. I'm like, what? No, what are we doing? Because it was like totally different than what we did before.
Yeah, I was at first like, wait, we're doing this now? What? Like, okay. And then too, my mind went to how, because, you know, when you're reading this, at least for me, my whole time was, how does he go from this nice man to President Snow? Okay, what is going to happen? So knowing that he worked as a peacekeeper, I was like, wait, how do you become this evil person? You should probably hate this job. It's going to suck.
He did hate the job. It seemed like it wasn't a job that anybody wanted. Like, it seemed a punishment, which I thought was interesting because they're cops. I mean, why is that such a hated job?
Yeah. So really, I was just confused and like, okay, what is going to happen? I don't even know what peacekeepers really do. Like you said, like a cop, but like, are they evil? Are they attacking people constantly? What's going to happen?
Oh, he seemed worried about that. Like, are they going to make me kill someone or something? You know, he didn't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think then Suzanne shows up?
Of course he does.
Corio so much. Do you think that what happens to Sejanus is Corio's fault? I think he trapped him with the bird.
If not for the bird, I would say, oh, maybe this would have been found out anyways. Because he did the bird, I think, yeah, like, you know,
Yeah, I think too. I think it is his fault. I mean, I don't know if he planned it to happen that way. I think he, like, when he was talking, and Janus doesn't hide his feelings, you know, he probably would have just, the word would get out anyways that he's going to rebel.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he would have, but it didn't help when he recorded him with the bird, and it seemed like at the time when he did it, he didn't know why he did it, but
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing, but he didn't erase it.
Well, I felt like the whole thing with him, with Corio is, you know, he wants to help Sejanus, but he wants Sejanus to, like, stop being stupid in his opinion, because Sejanus does a lot of things where he is very, to his credit, he does not stop being himself. He's very much a person. If he's against something, he will be against it, and he will try to change it, which is actually a good thing. But I think in this society, you get punished very badly if they learn of this. So I felt like Corio kind of cared about him enough to be like, hey, dude, stop it. But then Sejanus, being Sejanus, was, no, I'm not going to stop it. So there was this clash always. But I felt like Corio, he tried to just save his kind of friend. Like, I felt like they grew on each other a little bit by the end, or hopefully. But I felt like Corio literally thought he was saving his friend, because in his mind, he thought maybe turning him in would prevent worse things. And I think it was actually the opposite.
Yeah. I really felt bad about what happened with Sejanus. Like,
Yeah.
that was brutal.
Horrible, too. And, you know, you feel like the book is very well written. It really hooks you. But it's also very depressing, because the characters you want to succeed, they don't, because the society is just so bad.
So, like, one of my favorite parts of this last part of the book was they talk a lot about the origins of the mockingjays and the jabberjays, you know, and how the difference. I had a hard time figuring out the difference, but the jabberjays were the ones that they created as a weapon to record things. And then they mated with mockingbirds, and then they had these mockingjays now that they were
Because
trying
they would sing, and then they would also repeat people. Wasn't that the big, like, combination?
Yeah, but they wouldn't repeat. They did this, the mockingjays did the songs, which
Yeah.
I didn't understand why Coriolanus seemed to really hate the mockingjays. Like, he hated them.
There was one scene, I thought, where someone had died and the birds were repeating something that had been said.
Oh yeah, the guy was hung, and he said, "Run, someone, run!" And the birds were singing that.
Yeah, so I wondered if that caused his hatred, because he hated that, like, I don't think Corio liked the society in general. Like, there was still hope for him at this point. So I felt like the birds just, like, made it worse, because you, like, hearing it once is bad. Hearing birds repeat it forever because they keep repeating was worse. That was the only thing I could come up with for why he hated them. But two, I don't know if you felt this way, the whole time all of these things about his hatred for the Mockingjay, etc., were coming up. I was like, gee, then Katniss in Hunger Games is the Mockingjay. What a...
Yes, that is true. I love
right?
the references to Katniss in the story, because they talked about where it was growing and the ground, and I don't know. That was great.
I'm not going to lie, the whole time I was reading, I was really disappointed I didn't remember the parents' names for Katniss's parents, because I wondered if they were in there. I started to wonder, oh, is Snow like Katniss's father? I doubt it. You know, again, I couldn't find the names, etc. But
I don't remember that either.
Places too, like, what if that's what it is?
Is Dr. Gall? Dr. Gall's the one that comes in and teaches him about the birds, right?
Yes.
So, like, I feel like Dr. Gall is like, I mean, Coriolanus to become what he is, kind of.
Yeah, and he was really groomed the whole time, I felt like. And, you know, they kind of gave him love and friendship, and then that all wasted away, and all he had left was this, and there we go, evil President Snow.
So one of the surprising parts of the book is we find out that Coriolanus' father is responsible for the creation of the Hunger Games. I almost forgot about this part. I forgot. So what do you think about that? I wonder if it made him think, was it embarrassing to him that his dad came up with this idea?
I was surprised. It was weird too because we never met his father as a character, and our Corio didn't really feel connected with him either. But to have that be your family's legacy was weird because he was so against it, but he was still a part of it, and he still technically won this Hunger Games. So then too, knowing that he becomes then the person in charge of them later, my mind went to, oh no, is this like a self-fulfilling prophecy? He knows his family did this. That's all they're known for. He doesn't like that they don't have recognition anymore. Maybe he's just going to improve it, so he's known for something.
It does make it feel like it's set them up for inevitability of being in charge of them later, and how this is kind of his family's legacy. And
But also it sucks that his family created it, because you take him at the beginning where, you know, his life is changed for the worst at first because of these Hunger Games, and then to learn that your father created it, that sucks too. I shouldn't say
it does, especially you didn't know it. Yeah. That's bad realization.
Right.
So do you think Coriolanus changes by the end of the story? Do you think he's the same in the beginning as he is in the end?
I don't think so. What do you think?
I think he's quite different in the end. And I think it's partially because all of these things that happened. Like, he went through this Hunger Games thing, and it was terrible. I think seeing the deaths was really hard for him, and especially the ones that he caused or was responsible for. I think that was hard for him, and it became part of him. Like, he mentioned them often. Oh, now it's up to 4 people that I'm responsible for killing, you know? And then, like, when this thing happened with Lucy Gray at the end, this really intense scene and stuff, I think he's kind of got that. I think it's like hardening him.
Yeah, I think
about his father. Yeah, I think.
And then too, you know, we start off and you see how much he cares and how much he thinks about his image and how vulnerable he is, etc. And, you know, I felt like he had so much hope and he could have went either way, And then I felt like, you know, as he had more connections, such as his buddy that would follow him everywhere, or Lucy Gray, etc., like, he really had a lot of connections that really actually humanized him. So, like, midway, I thought he was more human. Like, he had a romance, he had his first love was happening, and
his cousin Tigris just seemed like she really made him human, you know.
Yeah, and
Orion.
Yeah, all these characters really humanized him, and then they kept dropping like flies. Some of him actually because of him, right? So I felt as he lost that support system that humanized him, he became less human each time. And then I felt like once Lucy Gray, that situation, that intense scene happened, I was like, well, he's done now. Like, you know, to try to impossibly have killed or, you know, your first love, that's a bit, I don't know.
Like, I like that in that last intense scene with Lucy Gray in the forest that there was a snake.
Yeah. And two, to have the snake attack you, that said to him that she tried to kill him. And I felt like having that turn, like, that was his moment where he's like, yep, nope, I am done with people that I can't trust, that are like a gamble. And then he just crawls back to the Capitol, and, you know, I don't know.
The snake wasn't poisonous. He was fine.
That's the thing, too. It wasn't poisonous. So, you know, I don't know. That was definitely an interesting twist, because I think it was easy to think she tried to kill him, da-da-da. But then she didn't really try to kill him because it wasn't poisonous. But he was the same.
What do you think happened to Lucy Gray? Do you think? Everyone thinks something different on this one, I've noticed.
I don't know. And this is why I was so angry at myself for like not rereading The Hunger Games prior to this, because I wondered if there were maybe hints that she actually lived and like is a character later on. Again, not to play this card, and they didn't say this happened, but if for some reason like she and Snow were together, if like she changed her name and like became Katniss's mom, I don't think that's even possible. But I was kind of
a sister too, so that I don't think that would work.
Yeah, so that was my first theory as I was reading until the end. But
although could be that her boyfriend is his name Dale. You know, let's see.
This made me wonder, and it made me kind of.
I don't know. It makes me wonder too. Now I want to read them because she did a really good job of sprinkling little things in there. You know, that you Hunger Games and from District 12 that you don't know. It could be, and some of these other characters are characters later too.
Yeah. So in all honesty, that was my ultimate, like, that would be really a fascinating twist to the whole series, right? If it was, he was actually Katniss's father and doesn't know it, and the hatred of the Mockingjays, because I was wondering too, Katniss sings a lot of songs that Lucy Gray sings. What if when we reread the books, it was something like, oh, Katniss's mother sang this to Katniss. Da da da. If that happened,
yeah, the songs. Where did she learn the songs? So, because Lucy Gray wrote them.
Yeah, and
I think Lucy Gray's alive. I think she's alive in the end. I think she's in the woods somewhere, and
I hope she has that. And she was going to go far to find a place she could live on her own with Corio. Maybe she just did it herself, and I don't know, maybe her other people came and joined her at some point. I don't know.
Although, if not, I guess that would be definitely something that would change Coriolanus to be more like President Snow if he actually killed her.
I felt really like, I shared my wild theory that I wish happened, but probably didn't. In a way, as morbid as it is, I almost wanted to think that she died because it just shows how inhuman he became at the end, or like how reactive and like the Capitol he became at the end, because obviously that's a really big step to take, especially for him and all the things he did to help her that brought him there to then throw it all away and kill her. Morbid, but also shows the evolution of his character.
It does. Now, I totally know I want to reread The Hunger Games now. I know that. How does Katniss learn these songs?
Yeah. So if it's a parent that taught it to her, then I'm wondering if some wild theories are less wild. But also, maybe everyone just remembers them from on TV or something, too.
Yeah. Or the Mockingjays that sing. I don't know.
But I still geeked out and loved that it added to the tension between President Snow later on, and Katniss, his hatred of Mockingjays. Like,
yes.
Seen that coming.
That is amazing. That's a good, well written, really good book. I kudos.
If you read
I'd like another one too. Let's the game people that we can't remember.
There we go. If you rated this on Goodreads out of 5 being the best, 1 or 0 being the lowest, would you have rated this?
I would have given it a 5. This is the best book I've read probably all year.
There we go. I also gave it a 5. I thought it was really fun to go back into such a morbid world. It's so weird calling it fun when you're talking about it.
I felt the same way. Going back to the Hunger Games was so fun. Like, I couldn't wait for them to start. I don't know.
Yeah. As morbid as it sounds, they're so well written. There's so much, for such a time that has no humanity, there's still so much humanity happening. I would argue, too, that these books really demonstrate, like, if you take humanity out of what you do, we could end up in times like this. Like, obviously, I don't think we're going to have the Battle Royale Hunger Games happening because there's books, and books are powerful, and when you read about it happening in a book, eventually the world would be like, this is the Hunger Games, don't do that. But also, you know, without humanity, without characters like Sejanus, like these things could, or horrible things can happen. And, you know, we have to stop those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good. It was good.
I definitely recommend it to anyone who's considering it.
5 stars.
I think too, it would have been a fun
If
experience.
you don't want to wait for the book copy of the book to come on your holds, you can get it on Hoopla right away as an audiobook.
Yes, and what's great with Hoopla is if you have a card for Kimberly Littleshoot, or if you have an Appleton card, there are a few other library cards that if you have your home agency from there, that will give you access to it as well. You get up to, we started off at 5 checkouts. I believe because of unfortunate things happening in the world, we did upgrade it a little bit more, but you can hear it. I hear the audiobook is great. Jill, you don't even really like audiobooks.
I don't like audiobooks, but I didn't want to wait for it, so I'm like, okay, I'll just listen to it. And it was well done. It was well done. It was fun.
And then too, I have to say, it would be a neat experience to have started with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and then go to Hunger Games, knowing it. I think that would be a fun experience. And I do think too, luckily enough time has passed that it will feel like that experience for us. Maybe not, we'll see. But definitely a good book, and I'd recommend it. It's really one of the best ones of the summer, and probably the best YA book that's going to come out this summer. But maybe not. I don't know what's coming. But also, too, I will say for those watching, there's a lot of Hunger Game read-alikes, too. So if you really love this series, this prequel, and you don't have any more left, if you go to infosoup.org, there's a novelist. Like you can scroll down and you can choose this database called Novelist. And you can type in Hunger Games, or if you just like the author's writing, you can type in her name. If you just liked one of the books in the Hunger Games series and hated the rest, you can type in that. And then you can get read-alikes for it. So there's definitely, when Hunger Games came out, a lot of books with just as horrible societies came out too. So there's lots to read. And then there's classics like 1984, Fahrenheit 451. So there's definitely lots of good stuff out there. But thank you all for watching. And if you have any book recommendations for us, please throw them our way. Do you know, too, that we're doing our summer reading program. This year it is online. Jill, if we'll drop that link in later, or as this premieres, we'll drop it in, and so you can sign up. But do you know that you can leave book reviews there? And we would love to hear what you'd think, whether it's in comments here or on book reviews there. But definitely give it a shot.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.